Now, if one actor was able to capture the silky but lethal charm of an upwardly mobile politico, it was not Simon Hughes, but Ian Richardson in the classic BBC series House of Cards. His portrayal of Francis Urquhart made Machiavelli look like Shirley Temple. He's just returned to the stage in the West End after an absence of almost a decade. And I'm going to be talking to him a moment about that. First, however, a reminder of his brilliantly sinister performance in House of Cards and that sly catchphrase he made his own.
Surely he can't still think he could be party leader, not at his age, not from the Lords.
So?
He doesn't want it for himself. He wants to pull the strings. He wants the party leadership for one of his protégés.
You might think that. I couldn't possibly comment.
Ian Richardson, welcome. 8 words which have pursued you ever since, like kind of unwanted terriers, I imagine.
Yes, they are. And not always particularly accurate. Shortly after House of Cards went out, I took my wife on holiday to the Bay of Naples. Inevitably, we struggled up the side of Vesuvius, the volcano, and when I got to the top, I'm standing looking into the still smoking crater down there, and a voice behind me said, "Yeah, you were grand in that, Telly. I liked it when you said, you can say that, and I'm not saying now." So I said to him, "You know, this crater is still smoking. It could go any minute now." Unfortunately, he took that as his cue and ran away.
Ran away. Now, you have this marvellously sinister, silky voice you used for that part and have used subsequently. But you're actually an Edinburgh boy. That's not your original voice.
No, my original voice. If my sisters, who still live in Edinburgh, and my nieces and nephews likewise, if their accents are anything to go by, I must have sounded slightly like them. What happened when I was about 14, and it was clear to a particular master at my school that the theatre was probably beckoning me, he told my mother, my father being away in the army at the time, he told my mother that I should be given elocution lessons. So I was. But I should think that when I went finally to do my national service, where I actually spent most of my time with the Forces Broadcasting Service, I think I must have been rather more like Morning Shade.
Morning Shade.
Yes,
Pay and loaf, as they call it up there.
Pay and loaf. Rates? No, we don't have rates. Anyway, fortunately, the chief announcer used to guide me through it, and I was able to collect my vowel sounds.
Those are the days of RP being essential for
well, yes,
young
you couldn't possibly expect to have a successful career unless you eliminated any regional accent.
Now, when you devised the way you played Urquhart in the TV series, actually, a lot of that was based on Shakespeare, which had been your meat and drink, really, for sort of 12 or 13 years.
15 years.
15 years.
Actually, it was rather ironic in a way, because the last role I played at Stratford-upon-Avon was Richard III. And there are similarities in the soliloquies that Urquhart has to camera to the soliloquies that Richard III has to his audience, insofar as he tells the audience exactly what he's going to do. I'm talking about Richard now. Exactly what he's going to do and how he's going to do it, and thereby making the audience fully complicit with his evil. And the same is true of Francis Urquhart.
So it's a sort of sly look to the groundlings becomes the sly sideways look to camera.
Yes. A lot of people thought that I would find that disturbing, but thanks to my Shakespeare experience, I didn't find it disturbing at all, although there was something that did worry me to begin with. You know, in front of the camera lens, they put a filter. For what reasons, I don't know. Maybe to take away the bags under the eye, something like that. But the effect of the filter was to, when I looked into the camera, I was looking at my face in a mirror, which was rather unnerving. But finally, I conquered my fear of it and decided to use it, the way one talks to one's reflection when shaving in the morning, kind of thing.
So you could, it was
yeah, so it became a help as opposed to a distraction.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, among the things you've been doing recently, Bleak House. It's been a fantastic success. Clearly, people like Dickens, done as a sort of soap opera week after week after week. Do you think there might be a bit more of this kind of thing?
Well, you see, what they did, in fact, when Dickens wrote Bleak House, among all his other oeuvres, he sent it out in weekly installments or monthly installments, I can't remember. And the first wodge that went out was quite substantial. Thereafter, followed by a couple of chapters. And the producers of Bleak House decided very sensibly and excitingly to emulate Dickens and do it in that format. And, of course, it captured the audiences for that reason, but also because it was awfully well acted, I think.
Absolutely.
Well, I didn't have much to do in it, except sit there in a rather silly wig.
It was good populist stuff of its day. It's been a long time since you've been on the West End.
Yes, nearly 10 years, as you said a moment ago.
Now, why is this the play that brought you back? What?
Oh, you know, I mean, I've just been shut up in that office place of yours, where the floor is littered with newspapers, and I don't normally read reviews. I was obliged, because they were lying there, to read 3 of them. And they asked the same question, why did I do this? Well, I'll tell you. One of them said, why doesn't he do Lear or Prospero? Lear and Prospero are on the cards for Stratford, but Ian McKellen is playing the one and Patrick Stewart is playing the other. I was begging someone to let me have a modern play that I could come back to the theatre with. Nothing materialized. Someone sent me the script and I thought, well, it's a fascinating part. It's not the greatest play in the world, but it's a frightfully good part.
Yes.
So I'll go back. And I'm being rather hammered, I gather, for going into something that they considered is not quite up to
I don't
standard.
think you're being hammered. I think the original playwright is getting it slightly in the
yes,
neck.
And I'm very sorry for Paul.
But one day, I mean, Lear or perhaps particularly Prospero would be a great role.
I think I'd love to do Prospero again. I played him when I was 37, which is too young, because my children were still with us, very much so, and I think you need to know what it feels like emotionally for your child to grow up and leave the nest, as it were, to use the cliche. And I had not experienced that. For that reason, I'd like to have another crack at Prospero. Lear, I think I've left it too late. I just simply do not have the at 71, I do not have the physical capacity to play Lear. And also, it can only come round every so often. And if Ian is going to do it, that means...
Really?
That's it.
That's it. Just simply because of the amount of time on stage and the emotional commitment?
Yes. And also, you don't want to be just another King Lear, you know.
You certainly don't. I'm sure you wouldn't. I'm sure you wouldn't.
I get out of my frustration at not finally playing the one role that I haven't played in Shakespeare by doing it in recital areas. You know, I have a Shakespeare program, and I get my chance to do my Lear there. Only a bit of it, of course, but it serves. I'm
sure it does. It's always served. Ian, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. We'll see you again shortly. Now, Moira, many, many thanks. Now, the Chancellor's still with us, Ian Richardson, Phyllis James as well. Do you watch these things, House of Cards, the thick of it, all these television attempts to describe the life you live?
Well, these are brilliant programmes, a great export for Britain as well. And P.D. James's novels I've enjoyed reading. I was actually thinking of using Ian Richardson's comment. I couldn't possibly comment to some of your questions earlier on.
Well, thank goodness that you didn't. Ian, are you actually interested in politics? Because you are about as famous a face as most politicians for politics.
I wasn't interested in politics at all until I started preparing House of Cards, and then I became absolutely fascinated by it, particularly as I was given a couple of experts who came along and attended all the scenes in Parliament, so that we got the protocols right and we behaved in the correct way. You know.
A great insight into human nature.
I didn't know, Chancellor, that those dispatch boxes actually have the Bibles upon which the members swear at the beginning of every session. So, in other words, if you're standing at the dispatch box and you're fibbing, and you've got your hands on the dispatch box, you're actually fibbing on the Bible.
Is that right?
It should be an encouragement to better behaviour, shouldn't it?
Well, I used to put my hands behind my back whenever I was fibbing.
I mean, I don't know if you watched House of Cards itself.
I did indeed.
And what about these? I mean, a lot of these programmes, though they're enormously enjoyable, and I'm thinking, like, sort of think of it, don't give politics, and particularly the Labour Party, a terribly good name. All the stuff about spin doctors and so on, people draw from the dramas as much as from real life, don't they?
I think so. Keynes, the famous economist, said politics was the survival of the unfittest, and sometimes when you watch the House of Cards, you believe that to be true. But I think both P.D. James and your programme is you're really exploring human nature, aren't you? How people behave in different circumstances.
Absolutely.
That's why I prefer watching sport on television.
Especially yesterday's sport.
Yeah,
well, you can learn quite a lot about human nature from watching sport.
Yes.
Human nature is worse very often, I think.
Yeah. Do you still have Alistair? Is it true, by the way, that Alistair Campbell's advising you now, as well as everybody else? Is that not true?
Alistair, I think, is doing a great deal around the country. I think he's speaking at lots of meetings, and I talk to him sometimes. But he's certainly not in any formal position of advising anybody.
Good form. All right.
He's enjoying life.
Thank you very much, all of you. It's been a pleasure to have you. That's all for this week. I did like the story, by the way, in the papers, this being Valentine's Day, about supermarket puddings for Valentine's Day, which, if you read the label carefully, then says serves 3. Anyway, if you thought this was a bit Caledonian this morning, dinner fret. Hugh Edwards will be here next week, and I'm back in a fortnight. See you then.